And I'll invite Michael Sanderson to come up and to speak. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you very much. Happy Census Day. Happy RBA Austerity Day.
Just move the microphone a little closer.
I suffer from a condition called severe processing dyslexia, so I'm going to struggle with this, just be warned. Thank you for your invitation to appear today. My name is Michael Sanderson. I appear as an ordinary citizen, a member of the great unwashed. I was born at a very early age in Port Augusta, South Australia, and I'm old enough to recall the British Vulcan bombers doing a low pass over the town, returning from Woomera. I spent my formative years in Alice Springs and attended high school with children of Americans serving at Pine Camp. Early in my working life, I worked for the industry of indigenous disadvantage in Central Australia, and I can say categorically that things are little better today than they were half a century ago. I served in the RAAF for almost a decade. I had a brief interlude with politics when I served as the independent member for Humpty Doo and Bees Creek in the inaugural Litchfield Shire Council. Today, as a retiree, I spend my time fighting banks, understanding macroeconomics, and responding to public inquiries and consultations. The underlying theme of my AUKUS submission is simple: follow the money. Ask who benefits. AUKUS should not be judged by slogans about security, alliance, or deterrence. It should be judged by public purpose. It should be judged by sovereignty. It should be judged by whether it makes Australia safer. It should also be judged by who gains power, contracts, access, and private advantage. In my lifetime, Australia has allowed too much of the industrial capacity and memory to be eroded. We have lost skills, factories, public capability, and national confidence. That did not happen by accident. It happened because public purpose was displaced by private interest, timid self-serving politics, short-term thinking, and the influence of big politics, big business, big unions, big banks, big consulting, big media, and now big AUKUS. AUKUS risks becoming another private rent-seeking engine. AUKUS will turn public authority, public money, public knowledge, classified access, and defence relationships into private advantage. And then there's the money. The dollar amounts for AUKUS may seem mind-boggling, but contrary to public understanding, the currency issuing Commonwealth does not lack Australian dollars. For context, Australia's compulsory superannuation pool is now equivalent to 12 AUKUSes. Just let that sink in. But that money was earned and taken from Australian workers. That money could have circulated through the real economy. That money is largely controlled by big private banks, big fund managers, big consultants, and big investment structures. Much of that money is spent offshore. Australia does not lack money. It lacks private direction and public understanding. It lacks the public courage and the vision to build, to own and control essential national capability in the public interest. My concern is not anti-defence. It is not anti-alliance, nor is it anti-technology. My concern is that AUKUS may give Australia dependency instead of sovereignty, rent-seeking instead of security, and private gain instead of public capability. Finally, the Ukraine experience poses a hard question. Are we developing the right technology to deter the threats that may evolve? I asked the inquiry to test AUKUS against a real public interest standard and ask who benefits, who really controls it, who carries the risk, and does it truly make Australia safer? Does it serve the good public purpose? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you for drawing the Commission's attention to the question of public purpose. And certainly there is a public interest in us considering these issues as we're able to do with submissions from the public. So thank you for that. I'll now invite Commissioners, if they do have any queries or other matters that they would wish to raise with Michael. Leanne.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael. Just wondering if you can talk a little bit more, so help me understand what you were talking about, that there is no lack of money in relation to AUKUS.
Okay. Economics 101. The Australian dollar doesn't appear out of air. That's the first thing. The issuer of the Australian government, of the Australian dollar, is the Australian Commonwealth Government. So every Australian dollar in the economy has appeared as a consequence of federal government spending. So the Parliament passes a bill which authorises the RBA to pay some private entity for the stuff that it purchases. It may be the duplication of the Hume Highway being a national. It may be paying me as the old age pensioner. Now that money sloshes around the economy until it's taxed out of existence. It's no more complex than that. When a person says, you know, the federal government is spending our taxpayers' dollars, they don't know what they're talking about. It's the other way around. You know, the federal government who issues the currency doesn't need its currency to spend. The taxpayer needs the federal government's currency in order to pay the tax. And then there's the illusion of this $1 trillion debt. You know, the debt is represented by the bonds that the private sector buys. Now, bonds are denominated in Australian dollars. They're not denominated in any other currency. So in order to purchase a bond, one must have Australian dollars, which the federal government has already spent into existence. So it's a convenient place for people with an excess amount of Australian dollars to park their dollars and earn a bit of interest, knowing full well that the federal government can never not be able to pay it back. Now, to illustrate another one, if for instance the Australian Office of Financial Management chose to cease issuing bonds, those bonds would disappear on maturity, and so would the debt. There would be no interest. You know, that could, I'm not saying bonds don't have a purpose, but their purpose isn't debt. We could open up an account with the RBA where people could, you know, stash their extra Australian dollars and earn a bit of interest. You don't have to have a bond mechanism. Does that answer your question?
No, thank you.
Thank you for that answer. And Chris?
Thank you, Michael. I've got a couple of comments. Firstly, I guess you would say the purpose of your submission was really to say we do not want AUKUS. secondly, when you spoke about the failures of the way we manage our society, you didn't point to a lack of leadership, which I think is a big issue. And then finally, could you tell me what you think a safe Australia looks like?
Okay, a state safe, well, the purpose of AUKUS is to protect our sea lanes. Now, I ask you, we are a country with massive resources. Now, the reason we have to protect our sea lanes is because our economies have been eroded by capital. So we import a lot of stuff now that we once produced. So my idea of sovereignty is to re-establish our ability to be able to produce stuff so it renders the requirement to have open sea lanes. It would then make an AUKUS submarine redundant. We'd probably have to do, not have some of the luxuries that we have today, but if we produce the stuff that we require as an economy, we wouldn't need the subs. We could be a Switzerland, we could be neutral. And as I said, we could be that bridge between the East and the West. There's something before I finish I'd like to bring up that is of importance, but I'll answer the questions first.
In that case, let me just see whether there are any more questions. No, thank you. So
Okay.
we'll indulge this final point and then we'll go on to the next speaker. Thank you, Michael.
I do a lot of submissions to public inquiries, Parliament, Treasury, ASIC, APRA. Now, there's a lot happening there. There's a defence procurement for entry fighting vehicles, Land 400 Phase 3. That represents $7.3 billion. Okay? We are paying $56 million for one red-backed fighting vehicle. Now, the interest was such that I was the only submitter to that particular inquiry. So,
sorry, just repeat that inquiry again for us.
it was the...
It's all right, Chris has got it, we understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I was as I said. Now it is graft. Yeah, so we've got a South Korean company producing supposedly at the start a mature platform that turned into a developing platform that was then decreased in numbers. And I said 56 months. That would be a pretty flash vehicle. Another example is the Taipan helicopter. It's $11.7 billion. Worked out to $250 million per aircraft. It was a dud. That particular inquiry got 13, mainly because of the crash up in the Whitsundays. The other caution is there is an agreement between the Government of Australia, NATO and the NSPO, which is the NATO Support and Procurement Organisation. Now, that effectively is a bit like a sub deal where the other side get immunity and diplomatic immunity, and if we challenge them, we've got to pay for their legal costs. So you need to look into the relationships past AUKUS. With the treaties, there's a number of inquiries looking into treaty. One that's just come out, the treaty between the Government of Australia and the Government of the Republic of Indonesia. I was the only submitter. There is public money being spent on private infrastructure in this country. For instance, the ATO building in Adelaide is shifting from a perfectly good building to a proper flash new one. And they're paying $89 million for the fit out in a privately owned. My question is, why aren't we owning these buildings? Now, why are we? But yeah, there's also, there's a building in Sydney where they're vacating and they're going to destroy and turn it into a park. It's a cyclotron building. They're going to spend $18 million destroying a building that could be used for something. That was some homeless people in there or something. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff happening out there.
Well, there certainly is, and we acknowledge your involvement in some of those matters. Thanks very much, Michael, for coming and presenting this.